and darkness to this aging woman's eyes showed plainly that she did not care in the least what she was wearing or not wearing. What astonished Yurii Androvich was the change in Pamphil's wife. He could scarcely recognize her. In the last few days she had aged terribly. Her goggling eyes were almost ready to pop out of their sockets, and her neck was as thin and long as a cart shaft. Such was the effect upon her of her secret fears. "She doesn't give any milk, my dear," she was saying. "I thought she might be in calf, but then she would have had milk by now and she still hasn't any. Why should she be in calf? You can see the scab of anthrax on her udder. I'll give you some herb ointment to rub it with. And of course I'll cast a spell on her. My other trouble is my husband. I'll charm him back, so he won't stray. That's easy. He'll stick to you so you won't be able to get rid of him. What's your third trouble? It isn't that he strays. That would be nothing. The misfortune is that he clings to me and the children with all his might, and that breaks his heart. I know what he thinks. He thinks they'll separate the camps, that they will send us one way and him another. And that we'll fall into the hands of Bassalygo's men and he won't be there and we won't have anyone to stand up for us. And that they'll torture us, they'll rejoice in our torments. I know his thoughts. I'm afraid he'll do away with himself. I'll think about it. I'll find a way to end your grief. What's your third trouble? I haven't a third one. That's all there is, my cow and my husband. Well, you are poor in sorrows, my dear. See how merciful God has been to you. Such as you are hard to find. Only 2 sorrows in your poor heart, and one of them a fond husband. Well, let's begin. What will you give me for the cow? What will you take? I'll have a loaf of bread and your husband. The onlookers burst out laughing. Are you joking? Too much, is it? All right, I'll do without the loaf. We'll settle for your husband. The laughter grew louder. What's the name? Not your husband's, your cow's. Beauty. Half the herd is called that. All right, we'll start with God's blessing. She recited the spell for the cow. At first she was indeed concerned with the cow, but after a while she got carried away and gave Agafya a whole set of instructions on witchcraft. Yurii Androvich listened spellbound, just as, when he first arrived in Siberia from European Russia, he had listened to the florid chatter of the driver, Bacchus. The woman was saying, "Aunt Majesta, come and be our guest. Come on Wednesday, take away the pest, take away the spell, take away the scab. Ringworm, leave the heifer's udder. Stand still, beauty, do your duty, don't upset the pail. Stand still as a hill, let milk run and rill. Terror, terror, show your mettle, take the scab, throw them in the nettle. Strong as a lord is the sorcerer's word. You see, Agafya, you have to know everything bidding and forbidding, the word for escaping and the word for safekeeping. Now you, for example, you look over there and you say to yourself, there's a forest. But what there is over there is the forces of evil fighting the angelic host, they're at war like your men with bassalygos. Or take another example, look over there where I'm pointing. You're looking the wrong way, my dear, use your eyes, not the back of your head, look where my finger is pointing. That's right. Now, what do you think that is? You think it's 2 twigs that the wind has tangled together. Or a bird building its nest. Well, it isn't either. That thing is a real devil's work, a garland the water spirit started weaving for her daughter. She heard people coming by, that frightened her, so she left it half done, but she'll finish it one of these nights, you will see. Or again, take your red banner. You think it's a flag, isn't that what you think? Well, it isn't a flag. It's the purple kerchief of the deaf woman. She uses it for luring. And why for luring? She waves it and she nods and winks and lures young men to come and be killed. Then she send famine and plague. That's what it is. And you went and believed her. You thought it was a flag. You thought it was. Come to me, all ye poor and proletarians of the world. You have to know everything these days, Agathia my girl, every single thing. What every bird is and every stone and every herb. That bird, for example, that's a starling. And that beast is a badger. Now, another thing. Suppose you take a fancy to someone, you just tell me. I'll make him pine for you, whoever he is, your forester, the one who is your chief, if you like, or Kolchak or Ivan Tsarevich, anyone. You think I'm boasting? I am not. Now look, I'll tell you. When winter comes with blizzards and whirlwinds and snow spouts chasing each other in the fields, I will stick a knife into such a pillar of snow, right up to the hilt, and when I take it out of the snow, it will be red with blood. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Well, there you are. And you thought I was boasting. Now, how can it be, you tell me, that blood should come out of a snow spout that is made only of wind and now? That's just it. My dear, that whirlwind isn't just wind and snow, it's a werewolf. A changeling that's lost its little bewitched child and is looking for it. It goes about the fields crying and looking for it. That is what I struck with my knife. That is why there is blood on it. Now, with that knife I can cut away the footprint of any man. And I can sew it with a silk thread to your skirt, and that man, whoever he is, Kolchak, or Strelnikov, or any new czar they set up, will follow you step by step wherever you go. And you thought I was telling lies. You thought it was. Come to me, all ye poor and proletarians of the world. And many other things there are, such as stones raining from heaven, so that a man may go forth out of his house and the stones rain upon him. Or, as some have seen, horsemen riding through the sky, the horses' hoofs hitting the tops of the houses. Or as sorcerers prophesied of old, saying, in this woman there is corn, in that one honey, in a third marten fur. And the knight opened the shoulder of the woman, as if it were a casket, and with his sword took out of her shoulder blade a measure of corn or a squirrel or a honeycomb. Occasionally we experience a deep and strong feeling. Such a feeling always includes an element of pity. The more we love, the more the object of our love seems to us to be a victim. In the case of some men, compassion for a woman exceeds all measure and transports her to an unreal, entirely imaginary world. Such men are jealous of the very air she breathes, of the laws of nature, of everything that happened in the world before she was born. Yurii Androvich was sufficiently well read to suspect that Kubaraka's last words repeated the opening passage of an ancient chronicle, either of Novgorod or Epitievo, but so distorted by copyists and the sorcerers and bards who had transmitted them orally for centuries that its original meaning had been lost. Why, then, had he succumbed so completely to the tyranny of the legend? Why did this gibberish, this absurd talk, impress him as if it were describing real events? Lara's left shoulder had been cut open. Like a key turning in the lock of a secret safe, the sword unlocked her shoulder blade and the secrets she had kept in the depths of her soul came to light. Unfamiliar towns, streets, rooms, countrysides unrolled like a film, whole reels of film, unfolding, discharging their contents. How he loved her! How beautiful she was! In exactly the way he had always thought and dreamed and wanted. Yet what was it that made her so lovely? Was it something that could be named and analyzed? No. 1,000 times no. She was lovely by virtue of the matchlessly simple and swift line that the Creator had, at a single stroke, drawn all around her, and in this divine form she had been handed over, like a child tightly wrapped in a sheet after its bath, into the keeping of his soul. And what had happened to him now? Where was he? In a Siberian forest with the partisans, who were encircled and whose fate he was to share. What an unbelievable, absurd predicament. Once again everything in his head and before his eyes became confused, blurred. At that moment, instead of snowing as had been expected, it began to drizzle. Like a huge banner stretching across a city street, there hung before him in the air, from one side of the forest glade to the other, a blurred, greatly magnified image of a single, astonishing, idolized head. The apparition wept, and the rain, now more intense, kissed and watered it. "Go along now," said the witch to Agathia. "I have charmed your cow, she will get well. Pray to the Mother of God, who is the abode of light and the book of the living word." 8. There was fighting on the western border of the Taiga. But the Taiga was so immense that the battles were like border warfare on the edges of a great kingdom. And the camp hidden in its heart was so full of people that however many went away to fight, there seemed always to be more people left. The rumble of the distant battle hardly ever reached the camp. Suddenly, several shots rang out in the forest. They followed one another at very close intervals, and all at once turned into a quick, ragged fusillade. People started up and ran quickly to their tents or wagons, and a general commotion began. Everyone got ready for battle. It proved to be a false alarm. But then a growing crowd streamed toward the place where the shots had been fired. They stood around a bleeding stump of a man lying on the ground. His right arm and left leg had been chopped off. It was inconceivable how, with his remaining arm and leg, he had crawled to the camp. The chopped-off arm and leg were tied in terrible bleeding chunks onto his back with a small wooden board attached to them. A long inscription on it said, with many words of abuse, that the atrocity was in reprisal for similar atrocities perpetrated by Sich and Sich, a red unit, a unit that had no connection with the Forest Brotherhood. It also said that the same treatment would be meted out to all the partisans unless, by a given date, they submitted and gave up their arms to the representatives of General Witsen's army corps. Fainting repeatedly from loss of blood, the dying man told them in a faltering voice of the tortures and atrocities perpetrated by Witsen's investigating and punitive squads. His own sentence of death had been allegedly commuted. Instead of hanging him, they had cut off his arm and leg in order to send him into the camp and strike terror among the partisans. They had carried him as far as the outposts of the camp, where they had put him down and ordered him to crawl, urging him on by shooting into the air. He could barely move his lips. To make out his almost unintelligible stammering, the crowd around him bent low. He was saying, "Be on your guard, comrades. He has broken through. Patrols have gone out in strength. There's a big battle going on. We'll hold him. There's a gap. He wants to surprise you. I know. I can't go on, men. I am spitting blood. I'll die in a moment. Rest a bit. Keep quiet. Can't you see it's bad for him, you heartless beasts?" The man started again. "He went to work on me, the devil. He said, 'You will bathe in your own blood until you tell me who you are.' And how was I to tell him? A deserter is just what I am. I was running from him to you. You keep saying, 'Who was it that got to work on you?' Let me just get my breath. I'll tell you. Hetman, Bekation, Colonel, Strees, Witsen's men. You don't know out here what it's like. The whole town is groaning. They boil people alive. They cut strips out of them. They take you by the scruff of the neck and push you inside. You don't know where you are. It's pitch black. You grope about. You are in a cage, inside a freight car. There are more than 40 people in the cage, all in their underclothes. From time to time they open the door and grab whoever comes first out he goes. As you grab a chicken to cut its throat. I swear to God. Some they hang, some they shoot, some they question. They beat you to shreds, they put salt on the wounds, they pour boiling water on you. When you vomit or relieve yourself they make you eat it. As for children and women, O God. The unfortunate was at his last gasp. He cried out and died without finishing the sentence. Somehow they all knew it at once and took off their caps and crossed themselves.